Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Porter's Product Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Porter, and today we're diving into something that every great product marketer needs in their toolkit, but not really often thought of, and that is storytelling. So joining me today is someone who's made storytelling a central part of his craft. I'm thrilled to welcome Elliott Rayner. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of OWOW. Elliott brings global experience from ARION, Babbel, and ASICS. He holds an MBA from the University of Madrid and a bachelor's from Copenhagen Business School. He's worked across product innovation, brand strategy, global marketing, and today we're unpacking how storytelling isn't just a skill, it's a strategic advantage. So Elliott, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Josh. I wish you could introduce me every time I walk into a room. That was amazing.
You bet. Well, maybe that'll be another opportunity for us. But definitely happy to have you. So storytelling is such an important topic to talk about with product marketers, and it's again not one of the topics that's covered a lot. So it's very essential for product marketing to have this in the toolkit. So with that, first question: a lot of companies see storytelling as something that really just happens at the end. Like, we've got the product out, then let's really create the story. But you approach it differently. How do you make storytelling a foundational part of the product marketing strategy, not just the final coat of paint?
Yeah, I actually think what you're describing is why I started to study storytelling. So this feeling that at the end, someone might ask you, well, we need to better story, or we need to improve the story. And then if you ask that, well, what do you mean by that? And what makes a great story? I think everyone would look at each other quite confused, because it's all so subjective of what a story is and what makes a good story. And that's really what started my journey into learning more about the science of it, and reading just so many books, but also just speaking to like really great product marketing storytellers, of which I've been lucky to work with so many, and ask them, like, what do you think is a good story and what is your process? And after all of that, I started to realize, like a product marketer does, that there's patterns and there's certain processes and there's frameworks that you can use to make storytelling a little bit easier. And that's what I really promote now, is that before you build anything, whether it's a campaign or a product or even a venture or a brand, to spend a bit of time thinking, well, before we even begin, what's the story we want at the end of this journey? And if we know that at the beginning, we can build a product that really represents that. And the good news is that all of those frameworks, they already exist. It's much smarter people than me have written them and tested them and utilizing them. It's just for some reason in product marketing that they haven't made it across. And that's what I spend my time doing now, is helping product marketers take storytelling from a soft skill to something that they actually apply.
Yeah, and I love that. It's so interesting to think about how it's overlooked, but yet a critical piece of product marketing. And you're totally right. Storytelling isn't a new skill. This has been used in a lot of other functions, entertainment, and other industries. But it's not, the dots have not necessarily been connected always with product marketing. So I love that you've taken that as your craft, your hard skill to implement from the beginning.
I think as a human being, you'll find it tough to go a day without telling some form of a story, whether in your social life, in your work life, and in between. We're doing it all the time. But it's like you say, I usually start, especially at conferences, to say, put your hand up if you think storytelling is an important skill. Every hand goes up. And now keep your hand up if you've ever actually studied before, and every hand goes down. So it's just this weird dissonance. Like you never have to really convince people. I mean, I have to do sometimes with products people, sometimes with founders, sometimes with more technical people, engineers. But marketers are pretty convinced. They've seen that storytelling works, and they've seen that, frustratingly, that one works because it has a story, and that one didn't because it didn't have a story. But yet still there's this gap where they've never taken the time to actually, I'm going to learn a little bit more about this because it feels like I'm going to be using it a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can feel a little ethereal, like, okay, this is something in the ether that I'm going to grab and maybe interject. But I like how you've studied the science, and as you're totally right, product marketers love their frameworks. There are actual frameworks. They've just been used in other industries. Let's bring that here, and that's what I think you've done really well. So when it comes to B2B, or really data-driven organizations, storytelling can almost feel a bit at odds when you're
Mhm.
trying to make decisions. How do you strike the right balance between telling a compelling story and then grounding it in hard data, especially for audiences that might be skeptical?
Yeah, I think that was always an interesting challenge because look, I've never spoken to a team that isn't obsessed with metrics. We all are metrics obsessed, and
Yeah.
we don't get to do anything if we can't back it up with some kind of data. And so then you're looking at, well, what's the relationship between storytelling and data? And is there anything out there we can prove? And it brings me back to another word that most of us get asked to improve, yet is very difficult to teach, which
Mm,
is emotion. How
yes.
many times have you heard, the campaign's not emotional enough, or it doesn't speak to the emotions of this persona? And you're like
Yeah.
thinking, do I need to make them cry? Do I need to make them angry? Which emotion
Yeah.
are we talking about? And there's some great work done by a company in the UK called System One. And that's their business, is that they hook people up and study their facial reactions to understand what emotions they're feeling in every microsecond. And then you can show them a campaign and you can actually see the data behind emotion. And what's
Mm,
great about doing that, and I really encourage everyone to just go watch a few videos, is that you start to notice things that are already true, which link to storytelling. That we really resonate when we see someone who we relate to, or a protagonist going for a problem, and we celebrate when they overcome that problem. The same
yes.
things that we love when we cheer when we watch a Netflix series or read a book. That there was storytelling principles in the hero's journey. You see that reflected in data as well. So there are some smart ways to kind of show, but always it just comes back to what we already know. We know that the best things that resonate are when they're tailored to an audience, and emotions are different depending on who you're speaking to. And so it's all about, how can I understand my audience more and tailor my product or my messaging towards them. And for me, that's exactly what product marketing is. So that's why I'm always saying, well, product marketing is the best role set up to do stories, because if stories depend on understanding your audience, well, that's what we claim to do best, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple things from what you said. Yes, that kind of like hero's journey is really important. And then
Mm-hmm.
part of that framework to kind of understand essentially what is the drama of the story? What's the
Exactly.
challenge?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the emotion comes in. And that's what honestly makes it interesting, because
Yeah.
without any drama, then it's kind of boring. But then
Yeah.
the drama brings the interest and can bring the emotion. And so
Yes.
I think you're spot on in being able to try to focus in on that piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So and on top of that, I also like to add that you can use that drama as part of the emotion, but at the same time in B2B marketing, yes, it can be very emotionless.
Yes.
And so being able to derive some type of emotion is really important. And a lot of times I try to, within reason, to try to add humor to it. Like
Yeah.
humor is an emotion. Like, how do you add something funny to it instead of this boring, dry copy or
Mm-hmm.
story that's happening? So I think that's absolutely a key way to kind of make your messaging stand out, as opposed to AI can do A, B, and C.
Yeah,
So
it's always a struggle because in B2B, we're convinced that there's human beings aren't making decisions at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if it's B2B or signed by a committee. It's still humans who need to make a decision between offer A and offer B. And usually, it's been proven that the one that's going to win is the one that connects. And storytelling, it works so well within B2B. You just got to find the right way to do it.
totally. And to your point, it can be hard to measure. Like that's the ultimate measurement. Like, did it connect? Because you
Hmm.
see a lot of sameness out there with a lot of these products. Are you able to connect with these people? And that happens through emotion. And so, and to your point, like, it's not everybody's going to be measuring motion per se, but it does have an impact on how you reach customers. So
Yeah, and,
that's
and trying to go through the full wavelength of emotions. Like I think most brands try to sell the dream. You're with a game changers. Your life's going to be
yes.
perfect. You just need this one feature. But as you've seen, like what works just as well is fear and anger, and being able to
Mhm.
tap in to say, we understand that it's terrifying to think you'll lose all your data, or that someone's you're gonna lose your job, or tapping into these emotions that we all feel and showing that you understand them before you try to say, well, our product can solve them. You don't just have to go in and sell the dream. That's why storytelling is so great, because stories don't work that way. If you just have if someone, I always give the example of sitting in a pub and you've got one guy who sits next to you who says, I've just come back from Monaco. I was on a yacht. I was drinking martinis. Everything went perfect. I was on a flight. And then the guy to your left, he said, I just went to France with my kids. It rained the whole time. The tent flew away. The train was late. Who do you want to listen to more? Like, I want to buy a beer for the guy. And because we love that. We love to hear about the challenge and the pain because we resonate with it. We identify with it. And so I think that works just as well everywhere. Is don't just try and sell the dream because it come off fake, but show that you understand the pain as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny you should say that. So I was watching Survivor last night.
Mm-hmm,
Yes, I watched Survivor, and one of the players was talking about how when he was a mailman was chased by a dog, and everybody was just laughing, crying, like they're like, "Oh man, this guy's so funny," and like it was about this. He was just telling a story, right? And but the funny part about it was, it's like he's just this regular guy. Had this funny challenge that just made everybody laugh, but they resonated with the pain, but it also made them like evoke some additional emotions. So there's a lot that happens with that.
That's nice. Yeah, I like that.
Awesome. All right. So now let's kind of zoom out to the full funnel strategy. How do you tailor storytelling from different stages, from awareness at the top of the funnel to activation and retention? And is it the same core narrative, or do you shape it differently along the way?
Yeah, I think what you try to do is build a narrative in the beginning, but then you can zoom in on certain parts of that story depending on what you're trying to achieve. So one thing I'd like to show is that, and you can read all these books and see the frameworks and get to this thing called universal story structure, which is at the heart of every story is this similar journey. You know, you have a protagonist. They go for a problem, they have a challenge, and they get free. The mailman's a great one. I'm going about my day. I just want to deliver this letter. Oh my God, there's a dog.
Yes.
I'm going to get chased. I'm running away from the dog. I can climb over the fence. I'm free, and I go to my next house.
Yes.
That is a very beautiful, very simple hero's journey.
Yes.
And it's very similar to the buyer's journey. You know, you have a customer who is going about their life. Mm-hmm. Something is not right. That's a pain point. And that's the problem that they're going through. We try to understand that problem. And once we understand it, we offer them a solution. And that solution is going to help solve that problem. And by the end of the story, they've got value and they've achieved what they needed to achieve through our solution, our brand, or our product. And so by understanding that a story is something that can be broken up into parts, it allows you to zoom into those parts whenever necessary. You know, very early in the buyer's journey, we're very guilty of talking about product. But, you know, sometimes you don't want to hear about 100 features in the beginning. Sometimes people need to be convinced they have a problem. They might not even understand that. Yes. That's even a problem I have. And you have to walk them through. This is why we have thought leadership and white papers to say, hey, you know, you need to update, or you need to be aware, you need to download this. And so I think that's the thing is that's another benefit of understanding your story is it allows you to get away from your product, which is something I think most brands are guilty of, is focusing too much on it. And to go to our previous point, it's been proven that product's one of the least emotional things. So if you want to use the benefits of emotion, then actually product isn't the way to go, especially not in the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So two things. I loved how you there's the classic hero story, which a lot of movies and books use, and then you bring it to the customer, the hero's journey, and then you say basically the customer journey is the same patterns. Mm-hmm. I'm going about my day. There's a problem. I tried to fix it, and then I overcome it with some kind of success.
Exactly, yeah.
So I love that. I think that's a great way to kind of think about that approach. And then when you're trying to think about it from the perspective of, all right, I need to show these customers that sometimes they don't even know they have a challenge. And so you're creating, I mean, that's marketing, right? Is to create awareness. Sometimes the most important piece is to create awareness of the problem you're having.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great approach.
And to share the stories of others who are going through that problem. That's one of the best ways and the most effective ways is case studies and testimonials, which are literally people walking you through their hero's journey to say, this is way I was a customer. These guys really helped me. Now my business is doing well. So it's a great way to just highlight and elevate stories of your power users or your favorite customers to do that for you.
Exactly. And I'm a huge movie buff, so I love kind of those patterns, and I love to kind of see, the evolution of the character and the story. So this is a great way to kind of show that pattern, how it works within product marketing.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always think that marketing at its heart is so much of psychology. That's the bit I love, is understanding how people think, feel, and behave. And the more you look into it, we really, so many of our decisions and our thought patterns are story related. So I think that really, the more you learn about storytelling, you learn a lot more about people as well. And that's a good thing to learn as a marketer.
Absolutely. Product marketing, I feel, is really the intersection of analytics and psychology.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's great.
So that's exactly to your point, is that stories help bring those together. And
absolutely, yeah.
Very good approach.
Connecting the dots.
Exactly. All right. So next question is, one of the hardest parts about being a storytelling driven marketer is building a culture around it, especially when leadership or product teams are more focused on metrics and feature velocity. What advice do you have for product marketers trying to build a storytelling culture inside organizations that really are more numbers first?
Yeah, I think this is one of the benefits I noticed from doing the workshops that I do. So the workshops where I go in and train a team on product storytelling. And it's usually because, we all get to that stage where maybe we don't agree on a direction that a product or a campaign is going, but we don't have the words to describe why it's not resonating. So they might be like, I don't like that story, or that story is not good, or I think that story could be better. But what can you really do with that feedback? You wouldn't talk about that in any other way with the product. And what learning about storytelling is, it gives you context and a language to say. So just as we're speaking now about, I don't think that's the right audience, or I think, that's the wrong challenge, or there's no cliffhanger, or we're not experiencing enough conflict, we're not building emotion. All of these things that are ways to describe a story. By product marketers understanding them more, then they were able to challenge each other and say, actually, I think not that it's a bad story. I think it's a great story. It's just missing a conflict or something like that. And I think that's a really important thing for teams to have, because then, like you say, you have this storytelling culture where you don't have to, you can be much more objective than subjective and challenge each other and push each other. And then, of course, the templates. It's never fun to say you need to write a story and look at a blank page.
Yes.
But if you've got this framework of which there are many, and you can try ones that fit you best, but then to experiment, and like a product marketer does, and try several beginnings and several endings and piece it together. And you know what it's like, eventually you're going to get there. But if you don't have that understanding that a story is something that can be broken up into parts, then you're just not going to be able to do that. So I think that's a really great thing for a product marketing team to do, to bring them together as a team.
Absolutely. Yeah, you gotta show companies that maybe are numbers driven first to break it down and say, hey, there is some science to this, there is some way to back up, we're going to do this. And you break it down in bite sizes, like you're saying, like, here's a framework, so we're not just making this up, and then here's some testing results, and we've seen that one of these stories works better than the other. So I think that's a great approach to kind of show them, all right, you want numbers? I've got numbers, and I've got a way to get there. So really good advice.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, Elliott. Well, I think this has been a great conversation. I think your ability to connect strategy and story really shines through, and I believe our listeners are really going to walk away with a ton of actionable ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we wrap up, we've got a rapid fire round. Ready for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, awesome. First question. What's your favorite marketing tool?
Favorite is Folk, F-O-L-K. It's a CRM for people who hate CRMs, which I do. It's done for designers. So yeah, that's made my life a lot easier.
Oh, interesting. I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to check that out. But
It's great.
that's a nice tip. Okay, second question. What's the most underrated skill in product marketing?
I mean, you know where I'm going with
Yeah.
this. Storytelling. It's been
Yes.
proven to me every team I go into that it's something that everyone agrees they need. And once they've learned it, they always seem very happy that, why didn't I learn this 10 years ago? So yeah,
Hmm.
for sure.
Totally. Totally. Third question, this probably will be related. What's the biggest mistake to avoid in product marketing?
I think the biggest mistake to avoid in product marketing is to try and define product marketing. I think trying to do it for a long
That's a
time.
good one.
And by the time you hear someone who describes it perfectly, then it's 6 months later and it's not perfect anymore. So
Yeah.
I think it's an evolving, beautiful thing. And yeah, it's best not to try and define it too much.
I love that. I think that there's a lot of truth to that because one company thinks it's this way, one company thinks it's that way, and
Never been in the same in any two places I've worked in. It's never
yeah,
been or seen the same.
that's 100% true. And then even within the same company, sometimes one person has a different opinion of what it means, and so I think that's really good advice because you try to define something and then you probably find that even if it is right, it'll evolve. So
yeah,
I think that's important. All right. Next question is, what's one thing you wish you knew when you had started?
I think never to be shy or embarrassed to ask stupid questions or any questions. I can't imagine the amount of things I've missed out on learning just because I was too embarrassed to say, oh, what's that acronym mean? Or
Yes.
how do I use this tool? And just lean it, like trying to be invisible and realizing, oh, it's the worst thing you can do. And the earlier you start being really curious, then the better it gets for everyone. So it's still something I need to get better at, but it's I see it all the time as it's the people who are the best are the people that apply that every day.
I love that. There's two things that really stand out to me about that. One, there's this adage that I really love. He who asks a question is a fool for 5 minutes, but he who doesn't ask a question remains a fool forever.
I like that. That's great. I'm stealing that.
Yeah, you should. Absolutely. But it's so poignant. It's like, okay, great. Maybe people think I'm an idiot at the moment that I ask about it, but then they forget about it. But you've learned something. But if you never ask it, then you actually are the fool forever. So I think that's important to point out. But also, I love, there's this quote from Albert Einstein: I have no special talent. I'm only passionately curious.
That's a good one as well. Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, I'm very much about curiosity being a really important skill to use.
Key. Yeah.
So, cool. All right. Well, last question. What's your favorite podcast?
Yeah, my favorite one that I'm very addicted to at the minute is The Rest is History.
Okay.
It's an English podcast, two guys talking about history in a very good storytelling way. And yeah, it's history, something you could not interest me when I was younger. And as I get older, I really enjoy it now. And as a marketer, I think I just want to take a break from everything. And it's a great palate cleanser for your brain to just learn about something so interesting, so long ago. And yeah, I find it really great. So I really recommend that one.
That's great. Yeah, my wife's super into history, so it's nice to kind of hear about that. And yeah, there are definitely lessons that you can learn from that. So
absolutely
awesome. Well, these are brilliant answers, Elliott. Thanks again for being on the show and sharing your storytelling wisdom.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, Josh.
You bet. And to all our listeners, if this episode gave you new ways to think about narrative, influence, and impact, please do us a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, share it with your fellow product marketers. And don't forget to subscribe to Porter's product marketing posts on Substack for more insights in your inbox. Until next time, keep leading with clarity and telling stories that stick.